There's two major things happening in the world right now which are undoubtedly having their effect on the cryptocurrency markets. Number one, the Evergrande debacle, and two, the shocking new US crypto regulations. Both of these situations are extremely serious. I would not be the least bit surprised to hear of people stockpiling their garden bunkers over either one of these things in isolation, yet alone both. So it's not a bit of wonder the markets are spooked right now. One threatens a worldwide recession. The other is the most significant step yet in the US war on crypto, potentially the biggest possible. In fact, if this was a war situation, I would liken it to effectively just asking Congress to launch the nukes. To me, it feels like an unexpected slap in the face. Not because I didn't expect a slap to come, but I was surprised at the severity of it when it did. But first up, what is this Evergrande situation? Simply, we are witnessing the spectacular collapse of one of the world's largest and most indebted property developers and general investors that is struggling to pay even its interest payments on their liabilities, yet alone their outstanding capital. And bankruptcy, according to experts, seems probable. You may have seen a lot of talk about this lately, despite the situation developing for a number of weeks now, but as of today, things got a lot worse when a recent deadline for payment of the loan's interest, some $100 million, has passed, and Chinese banks have just been informed they won't be receiving their payments. Now, estimates of just how much this real estate developer primarily is indebted ranges. From what I've seen, what I've read, the estimates range from $200 billion in debt, $500 billion in debt, or more. Financial Times here estimating $300 billion of liabilities. Suffice it to say, it's a lot. But why is this a problem? A frequent comparison is made of another financial institution who struggled to pay back their debts, known as Lehman Brothers. They were estimated to have had $700 billion of debt, and whom the government refused to bail out, in which their subsequent bankruptcy helped cause one of the world's worst financial crises in recorded history. Other Chinese real estate development companies are massively down as of this week, as the panic really begins to kick in now. One of them down 90% in a single day. Its effect can be seen on the entire Hang Seng Index, or the Hong Kong stock market. The fear of this collapse is even likely impacting the S&P 500, seeing its third straight week of losses, which is just about how long the situation has been common knowledge now in the West. Why wouldn't the government just save it if it's so important? It's a catch-22. The government absolutely can save the situation, bail them out, force them to restructure, downsize, fire all of the upper management, whatever the case may be. It would be the most likely outcome here. However, they are reticent to do so, as they would essentially be condoning the type of reckless borrowing and probably huge CEO bonuses that got Evergrande into this situation in the first place. Removing the risk for huge bets because the state will always bail you out, or in other words, literally too big to fail, will see their economy bolstered in the short term, a disaster averted, but their financial system would likely get less resilient and may make future problems even worse. A problem China's President Xi Jinping seems hell-bent on avoiding, enacting more draconian laws last year to crack down on levels of debt businesses are allowed to have, which in part catalyzed the very issues that Evergrande now faces. So while I think he'll be loath to financially assist, an intervention of some kind does seem likely. Even still, should nothing be forthcoming, that does not mean the US wouldn't provide financial assistance should a large financial institution in the West face bankruptcy as a knock-on result of this. So while it is concerning, I do think it's a little bit early to be worried, unless you're invested in Evergrande, obviously. Next up, shocking new crypto regulations proposed. I am referring to a draft legislation known as the Digital Asset Bill that is being put through US Congress currently. They absolutely need to read what they are agreeing to here. It's insane. There's a great breakdown of what it means and its implications on this post on the Bitcoin subreddit, which I'll leave links below, but here's the important synopsis and my own interpretations. Whoever wrote this legislation clearly has a deep knowledge of the current financial system, potentially only a moderate understanding of crypto, but what the writer is frighteningly good at is writing a legally plausible proposal that meets CFTC guidelines, even though it is completely preposterous. And while this is all seemingly just US-based, so us Brits or EU citizens need not worry, what happens in America could be used as guidelines by other countries wondering how to treat digital currencies, but at the very least, it can definitely affect the market long term. Specifically mentioned in this bill are fines and jail time for using privacy coins or crypto anonymizers, aka mixers, regulating and taxing funds used in DeFi protocols for longer than 24 hours, banning the use of stablecoins, re-emphasizing the designation of Bitcoin and Ethereum, and demanding classification of the other top 25 assets by market cap within a year, more international regulation, and signing away unprecedented powers over to the Federal Reserve. I won't lie, it's designed to crush the aspirations of crypto holders everywhere.
Give up. Don't dream. Just stop working hard and let your dreams be dreams. You can't do it. Nothing is possible, and you're not gonna make it.
But let's break this down. Starting at the top of this insane list. The Bank Secrecy Act is going to be amended to sanction the use of anonymity-enhanced convertible virtual currencies and anonymizing services. It is worth noting that the willful violation of the Bank Secrecy Act could give rise to a fine of not more than $250,000 or imprisonment for not more than 5 years, or both. Both, they say. Well, that escalated quickly. You could be imprisoned, financially ruined, for simply using a coin like Monero. How do they plan on proving it? Also, with anonymizing mixers, say Samurai or Wasabi Wallet for Bitcoin, Tornado Cash for Ethereum, if you don't know, these effectively make it very difficult to know where the coins came from before the mixing. Not that I would know anything about these services. But if you were to be paid or sent coin by someone who used a mixer like this, does that mean you're going to jail? What if your wallet becomes public knowledge and someone bank attacks you by sending you mixed coin? How do you prove you weren't the one who mixed those coins? The whole situation kind of reminds me of a scene from a Batman movie.
I am one of you.
This is merely a sentencing hearing. Now, choice is yours. Exile or death.
So let's just get this straight. If this bill goes through, as it is currently worded, you could be financially ruined with fines and go to jail for simply receiving crypto. This is actually completely idiotic and quite scary. Also, terrible for businesses. Really, the only solution to avoid this would be extensive KYC requirements of any customer who wants to pay using crypto, or just simply not allowing it. Next, regulating DeFi protocols as futures contracts. To me, this is my opinion, but this specifically is a ban on DeFi protocols. Why? Because the SEC regulates all futures markets, and you would need their express approval before becoming legal. How then, pray tell, is a decentralized protocol meant to apply for and seek approval from the SEC to operate? The answer, they aren't. That's the whole point. This bill seeks to kill the functionality of people ever becoming their own banks. Next, banning the use of stablecoins. In general, beginning on the date of the enactment of this section, no person may issue, use, or permit to be used a digital asset fiat-based stablecoin that is not approved by the Secretary of the Treasury under subsection B. Well, that probably rules out Tether then. Actually, it will rule out all of them. Imagine being criminally liable if you use USDC. That is beyond insane. It would cripple crypto trading. And this would also pave the way for a CBDC, or central bank digital currency, to rule uncontested, which I'll get into a bit more later. Next, the reclassification of Bitcoin and Ethereum. Here's a list of current commodities. See if anything to you stands out. Wheat, cotton, rice, corn, oats, barley, Ethereum, butter, eggs, wool. You get the point. Bitcoin and Ethereum currently already are classified as commodities, but this reclassification or reassertion of the former is meant to shut the door on them ever being labeled as legal tender, I think. Meaning that for every transaction or sale, you will be liable for capital gains tax, unlike transacting with dollars. You can clearly see just how hard they are pushing to kneecap crypto at every available turn with this bill. Getting heated. Next, more international regulation. From the latest FATF guidance, a number of possible additional restrictions can already be deducted. Things to look out for are the restriction of the use of unhosted wallets, the introduction of the travel rule, labeling those who engage in peer-to-peer transactions as a risk, and a whole host of other measures. I mean, this bill is dystopian. Imagine your mom gets on some watch list because you encouraged her to buy some Bitcoin, and they come after her both. They come after you and her for it.
I can't wait to go back home and see my mom.
And last, but very not least, to go out on a bang here, unprecedented amounts of power signed over to the Federal Reserve. After ensuring crypto cannot be used very easily as money, the Federal Reserve will have new, far-reaching powers. The Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System, after consultation with the Secretary of the Treasury, is authorized to use distributed ledger technology for the creation, distribution, and recordation of all transactions involving digital Federal Reserve notes. Recordation, a word so ill used. Microsoft Word has a red squiggly under it. Perhaps more appropriately, but less flatteringly, would be that all transactions are monitored, as recording all transactions that no one looks at would be an absurd notion. However, even this complete loss of privacy doesn't overshadow the second thing introduced in this part of the bill for the Federal Reserve, which would be the introduction of powers to create a digital USD directly. This is a huge change because a common misconception is that the Federal Reserve directly prints money. They actually don't. They attempt to control the money supply and determine how many bills are printed by the Treasury Department, but this would give them power to create directly. Now, there are people who argue even the current powers of the Federal Reserve are wholly unconstitutional. Here's why. Critics believe this system violates constitutional law because public policymakers are being picked by a quasi-private structure. Once officials are appointed, it is difficult for the government to remove them. Detractors argue these officials typically have close ties to the banks they oversee and are therefore more likely to look the other way when policing bad behavior. And bad behavior is absolutely rampant. In other words, the tremendous power and responsibility of managing money isn't held for the most part by democratically voted representatives of the people that can be held responsible for their actions, but rather a private sector, a board of directors, if you will. This is a very clear conflict of interest. In fact, there is no conflict. Their interests are for themselves and their board, and if it happens to benefit citizens, cool, but not exactly mandatory. The Federal Reserve itself has problems so big, John F. Kennedy sought and signed their destruction, but was soon after assassinated and the work commenced immediately reversed. This new digital asset bill seeks to give up freedoms that should come with a democratic system, but is this bill likely to be passed? I don't think so. For all the aforementioned reasons, we don't know when this is getting voted on, and it still has a long way to go. We have to hope that donation money from the private sector, traditional finance, doesn't sway too many members of Congress, because you can imagine how badly the big banks want this bill to be passed. They would all but control digital money if it does get passed. So how can you stop it? Voting, calling your representative, petitioning. Basically, what crypto enthusiasts could use is a volunteer organization willing to make phone calls every day to spread the word on what is happening to anyone they believe is pro-crypto based on surveys and voting data. A crypto lobby group, per se, that we can donate to. I hope it's going to happen. All in all, this is an attempt to rob people of their abilities to create wealth for themselves, a robbery of their individual freedoms, and seeking to give more power to the powerful, all under the pathetic guise of protecting investors. It's cowardly. That's the end of the video. If you liked it and you would like to watch more, I literally just said that this is the end, so that's impossible. Sorry. Life really isn't fair sometimes.